Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jessica Ward King, the StigmaCrusher here. Today I wanted to talk about 5 things that I have had to think about in my life that maybe not everybody that doesn't have bipolar has to think about. The first one I'm thinking of is something I thought about extensively when I was a lot younger, and that is whether or not I could or should have children, whether or not I would pass along my mental illness to a potential child. And now I don't have a uterus or ovaries, so it's a non-issue, and it's been that way for, about 13 years. But before I had that complete hysterectomy, I thought a lot about whether I would have my own biological children, because I was very concerned that I might give my bipolar disorder to any child that resulted. Now, there is a genetic component to bipolar disorder, but it's definitely not 100%. It's not even 50%. We're talking like in the 5 to 10% range. It does seem to run in families, but we don't know where I got mine from. There doesn't seem to be anybody in my immediate family that struggles with bipolar disorder. Certainly in my more extended family, there are those that struggle with different psychiatric diagnoses, but none with bipolar disorder. And so if you kind of looked at it logically, like, well, where did I get it from? It wasn't from my mom or my dad. Then what are the chances that I would pass it on to my own biological child? But it is something that I had to think carefully about, especially since when I was a younger person, that's when I was first struggling with the whole concept of having a mental illness to begin with. And I was struggling very, very hard with, I was in and out of hospital and on electroconvulsive therapy and off again. And it was a really rough time. And so I thought, do I want to bring a child into the world with this being the potential outcome? And it's definitely something that each individual potential parent has to think about for themselves. I'm definitely not against people with bipolar disorder or mental illness in general having children. In fact, I probably would have come down on the side of having my own if I hadn't needed to have a complete hysterectomy for other medical reasons. So it is something I had to think about. The second one is related to that, but a little bit separate. And once I decided that I wasn't going to have my own biological children, and my wife and I decided we wanted to adopt, I had to think about whether I was going to be able to adopt. With a serious psychiatric illness on record, there were questions about whether I would be a fit parent because of the stability of the home life that I would be able to offer, for example. And we do know that fostering and adopting is very hard on a person, on a relationship, on a couple, on a family unit. And so there were questions about whether my mental health could withstand the process of matching and fostering and then going through the whole procedure to adopt and with visits and all the rest of it. And so, I had to have a letter from my psychiatrist and from my family doctor, both attesting to the fact that they thought that I was fit to adopt a child. But there were a lot of times where I worried whether that was going to be the case. And then when we started the process to do it again, it was actually another sticking point, because by then I'd had another significant episode. And so it was another sticking point. We decided not to go through with the second adoption, but it was a factor there. So the first two, they're both related to having children, but one of them is the biological, what are the knock-on effects? And the second one is kind of more, are they going to let me because I have a mental illness? And part of that issue is due to stigma, because folks, even, social workers and folks in the family care system don't understand mental illness. And so just the whole fact that you have a mental illness on record can be something that is cause for concern for them. The third thing that I wanted to highlight might sound a bit funny, but it's whether or not I should have 2 very common things that adults have: a driver's license and a credit card. And so this more pertains to when I am manic, so in my manic states. I am actually not allowed to drive. And the reason for that is that with this pre-existing condition that's known, if I were to get into an accident while driving while manic, then my insurance wouldn't be valid. So I actually get, my license taken away when I am in a manic episode. Similarly, when I'm in a manic episode, I tend to get hyper spendy. I've told you before on this channel where my wife and I kind of have this understanding. We've agreed to it that when I get in this state, this manic state, and it used to be that the worst you could do at midnight with a credit card in a manic state was go to the nearest gas bar that was 24 hours and buy every candy bar in the place. That was about the worst damage you can do. Now you can do Amazon, right? And so one of the things that we do when I am manic is take away my access to the credit card. It's not as easy as just go and purchase things, because hyperspending is one of the risky behaviors that I engage in when I am manic. So those are like two very common things that you would find in an adult wallet, but they're considerations for me as a person with bipolar disorder as to whether they are things that I can have at all. The fourth thing is whether I'm going to make it to old age and in what condition. So a lot of the medications that I take, first of all, have some serious side effects that can get worse as you get older and don't go away. So lithium, which I took for years and years and I'm still taking, can have cytotoxic effects on the kidneys. So it can cause kidney shutdown. The antipsychotics that I take can cause tardive dyskinesia or movement disorders that don't go away once you get them. They persist. And those things tend to get worse as time goes on, the longer that you take these medications. In fact, we do know that the average person with bipolar disorder lives 7 to 15 years less long than a person that does not have bipolar disorder. So I'm expected, if the average life expectancy for a woman in Canada is around 85 at this point, I'm expected really only to live until about 70 to 77 years old. So I'm not expected to live into the ripe old age just because I have bipolar disorder. Now, is that a 100% thing? No, of course not. There are going to be some people that live with bipolar disorder that live to a very long, like a very old age. Some people that die earlier, of course. It's really, it's a range, but on average, that's something we see. Now, there is some consideration there. Does that count people who have died by suicide at a young age and so on? So the way that we look at the statistics does matter, but I have had to consider, it has crossed my mind more than once whether I will see my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, as just because I have bipolar disorder. And the last thing that I have had to think about, because I have bipolar disorder, is whether I am ever going to, whether I'm going to wake up the next day feeling like myself, or whether I'm going to wake up the next day in a manic state, in a depressed state, when the next episode is going to hit. And so I'm constantly tracking my moods. I'm constantly looking for any little sign that either pole of my episodes are coming back. So looking for any sign of, not sleeping, not, having hypersexuality, hyperspending, or sleeping too much, eating too much, not wanting to do anything, feeling down and blue. And those are kind of normal human experiences. I mean, our behavior and our feelings, they really do, they have a very large, like a gray area, right? And so the realm of human experiences does go from being a very high energy to being very low energy, and very high mood to very low mood, just as a normal person. but I'm constantly looking for the slightest signs so that I can catch it as early as possible, because the sooner you catch an episode, the better off you are as you go. And in terms of being able to stop it from getting too far and to stop it from affecting your life so much. And so I constantly am having to go to sleep wondering, what does the next day bring? Now, for all of these 5 things, you could be saying, well, I have that experience too. Like, for example, let's say, well, I know heart disease runs in my family or cancer runs in my family. And so do I want to pass that on to my child? And, I have to worry about my driver's license because my vision's bad, things like that. Absolutely. Other people have these experiences too. But I just wanted to highlight today some of the really common things that a lot of people don't have to think twice about, or don't spend their time thinking twice about, that I have had to just because I have bipolar disorder. So do you have anything in your life that you've had to think twice about that you don't think is, what the normal experience is? I would love to hear that in the comments down below. I would also like to hear if you have any questions for me. I'm thinking of doing an Ask Me Anything type segment where you can ask any questions at all that you are wondering about bipolar disorder, about mental health and mental illness, about my experiences, anything at all. No questions off limits. Please feel free to leave that in the comments down below, or wherever you are getting this notification, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you can absolutely feel free to leave me a comment there as well. Take care of yourselves this week. We are going into the heart of summer now, making our way into July. So if you're taking any vacation time, any breaks from the normal routine, please enjoy it, stay safe, and I will see you in my next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.
StigmaCrusher.